You know, I thought by now we'd be done making Powerstroke videos, but here we are yet again making another video. But this time I want to switch it up. Instead of looking at the 6-liter Powerstroke or the 6.4-liter Powerstroke, both of which we know are problematic, we've already made videos on them, I want to look at the newer motor. I want to look at the 6.7 Powerstroke and find out everything wrong with that motor. Now, if you didn't already know, the 6.7 Powerstroke is the current engine used by Ford, and it's the last engine in the Powerstroke lineage, which starts with the 7.3 Powerstroke, then the 6-liter Powerstroke, then the 6.4 Powerstroke, and now the 6.7. So get buckled in, get comfy, let's take a look at the 6.7 and everything wrong with it. Real quick, for those who don't know why Ford built this engine, I think we should rewind the clock a little bit and see where this came from and what makes it so different as compared to the 7.3, the 6.0, and the 6.4 before it. Previous Powerstroke engines were built by Navistar International. The 7.3, the 6-liter, and the 6.4 were all built by Navistar rather than Ford themselves. Navistar put these engines together on Ford's behalf, and then Ford simply just paid them for the motors, plopped them in their F-Series truck, and that was that. The 6-liter was developed and replaced the 7.3-liter because of one thing, and that's emission standards. The government and the EPA specifically make it increasingly difficult to pass emission standards by raising the bar consistently. This artificially forces innovation on manufacturers to produce cleaner engines, all with the aim of cleaning up the air that you and I breathe. As to why they don't put more focus and energy into the aviation industry or the maritime transportation industry or the military industry where there's little to no emissions components at all on any of those pieces of equipment, I have no idea. That's a different video entirely. But regardless, the EPA's focus is to decrease emissions output on vehicles. So with the 6-liter, they were able to squeeze by the emission standards that were getting stricter that the 7.3 could not pass. But the 6-liter ended up becoming incredibly problematic and costed Ford a ton of money in warranty claims. So Navistar came back to them with the 6.4-liter, which was supposed to provide even better emissions output to continue passing the stricter standards and fix the problems that they had created with the 6-liter. Unfortunately, the 6.4 Powerstroke was also very problematic, and Ford only used it from 2008 to 2010. After the failure of the 6-liter and the 6.4, Ford dropped Navistar and decided to design and build their next Powerstroke engine in-house, which was the 6.7, aka the Scorpion. That was back in 2011, and the 6.7 is still being used today, which is a testament to how superior it is to the Powerstroke engines that came before it. But, although it's a much better engine than the earlier Powerstroke engines, it isn't completely problem-free. Real quick, I want to mention that there are 3 generations of the 6.7 Powerstroke. You got the first gen from 2011 to 2014, the second gen from 2015 to 2019, and the third gen from 2020 until now. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the most fatal flaw, the #1 problem on the 6.7 Powerstroke, and that's the injection pump from Bosch. It's the CP4.2 injection pump. This is the same injection pump that you'll find on other diesel trucks like the LML Duramax, some 6.7 Cummins engines, the 5-liter V8 Cummins and the Titan XD, as well as many other applications. It's arguably the most popular injection pump available for manufacturers to use on their engines, but it's also known for being quite problematic. If the pump self-destructs, it will send metal fragments through the lines and rails into the injectors and then out of the return system. Detecting this failure before it happens is basically impossible, and by the time it's through, you'll need to replace the pump, the lines, the rails, the injectors, and more. The problems typically occur when contaminants get into the fuel. The whole reason that manufacturers choose the CP4 pump over the CP3 pump is production cost and weight. The CP4 pump is much lighter thanks to its aluminum construction and much cheaper. Typically, these pumps see failure at or before the 100,000 mile mark, depending on the quality of fuel and how well the truck is maintained. While there isn't really a singular source of problems with the CP4 pump, a lot of it revolves around the debris and metal shavings from cam erosion. Those metal shavings are eventually passed through the whole fuel system, and as time goes on, it's really only a matter of time until something fails entirely. There's not really one way to fix this problem, but there are some aftermarket solutions to help cover it up and sort of fix it. Really, the best fix for the fuel system and the Bosch CP4 pump is to just properly maintain your fuel system, use good fuel, change out your fuel filters when you're supposed to, and that'll mostly fix that issue. Now, the next problem is one that actually surprised me during the research phase for this video, and that's the turbocharger. Most of the turbo issues start with the turbo itself, which is the Garrett GT32 SST. That's the turbo Ford used on the 2011 to 2014 models. Before we get into the problems on the turbo, I want to quickly highlight what makes this turbo so interesting, and that's the fact that it's effectively 2 turbos packaged in the size of one. This works by using 2 compressor wheels while only using 1 turbine wheel. Unfortunately, this turbo has really small compressor wheels, which means it has to spin very, very fast in order to produce the target boost levels needed for the amount of performance the engine offers, which is where some of the problems start. In stock form, it's not uncommon to see the shaft speeds hit over 100,000 RPM and over 150,000 RPM when tuned. Unfortunately, this means that the 2011 to 2014 Super Duty trucks didn't have exhaust braking ability because Ford wanted to keep the turbo alive, and exhaust braking would definitely kill it even quicker. With such high shaft speed, there's a ton of work for the bearings to do. The GT32 SST generally fails because of the dual ceramic ball bearing center section that Ford used, but they fixed some of this by switching to steel bearings in 2013. Ultimately though, this turbo didn't give them the peak performance that they wanted, so in 2015, when the Gen 2 motor came out, they switched to a more traditional style turbo with the Garrett GT37. This new GT37 turbo features a much larger 61mm compressor and 72.5mm inducer, compared to the GT30 SS2 with its 46mm compressor and 64mm inducer. By using much larger turbo wheels, this new turbo flows way more air and doesn't have to work nearly as hard as the old turbo, which simply means lower shaft speed and more power. The GT37 also utilizes a journal bearing center, which is not necessarily better, but it's definitely cheaper to rebuild when or if it fails. It's also worth noting that the 2011 to 2012 trucks commonly have a coolant leak on the turbo coolant inlet pipe, but Ford quickly fixed that issue. The next issue that I want to cover is one that caused a lot of controversy because it left emergency vehicles powered by the 6.7 stranded on the road. At least one faulty EGT sensor was identified on the 2011 to 2012 F350, F450, and F550 trucks equipped with the ambulance package. The emissions after treatment system on the 6.7 Powerstroke features several EGT sensors. When one of the sensors fails, a vehicle may shut down while driving and fail to restart entirely. Outside of the ambulance package trucks, the EGT sensors are generally known for being problematic on the 6.7 in general. And again, if one sensor fails, you can be stranded. To be fair though, the EGT sensors are really cheap. They're like 35 or 50 bucks and they're super easy to replace. They generally take under 20 minutes to swap out. So it's really not that major of an issue. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's not any sort of major catastrophic problem. Moving on, the next common issue is something that plagues pretty much all diesel trucks with modern emissions equipment, and that's the EGR cooler. Luckily, after all the EGR cooler issues with the 6 liter and the 6.4 liter, Ford worked really hard to make sure that the 6.7's EGR cooler would be much more reliable, but unfortunately, it still can be a source of problems. Like the 6.4, the 6.7 uses 2 EGR coolers, but this time they're enclosed within a common housing instead of being separated. The common housing is specifically designed to allow for expansion and contraction without rupturing the EGR coolers. The EGR valve also controls the exhaust flow before the EGR coolers rather than after it, like previous Powerstroke engines. While it doesn't rupture nearly as often as the older EGR coolers, the 6.7's EGR cooler is still known for getting clogged with soot, especially on trucks that have a lot of idle time. Because diesel engines don't produce that much heat while idling, they don't burn up hydrocarbons. So trucks with a ton of idle time will end up with a ton of soot in the EGR cooler that could have been burned off if the truck was driven during those hours rather than idling. Because they moved the EGR valve to the hot side, Ford mostly fixed this issue, but it's still there. For people who don't particularly care about having a legal truck, fully deleting this system is the easiest way to fix this issue and ensure that it never comes back. But it's a pretty big fine if you get caught on the road with a deleted truck, so tread lightly. The last few problems I want to cover are that the nitrogen oxide sensors are also known for failing quite a lot on the 2011 to 2012 trucks. Those same early model trucks are also known for having defective radiators from the factory. And on top of that, early production engines are also known for dropping glow plugs, which can cause catastrophic failure. I think it's worth mentioning though that these incidents with the glow plugs are not that widespread and have not been seen often enough for Ford to recall the issue. It's not an issue on the later trucks, and it's almost entirely associated with earlier chassis cab models. There's also issues with the upper oil pan gasket leaking a ton, as well as the front cover on 2013 and later trucks because of Ford switching to a silicone silicone style gasket. It's also worth noting that the crankcase pressure filter can get clogged up and cause crankcase pressure to go through the roof, which then creates even more oil leaks because of the amount of pressure. Outside of the problems that we just mentioned, there's really no other major issues with the 6.7. It's super reliable as compared to the 6 liter and the 6.4 liter, as an engine should be. There should not be a lot of, like any of these videos that cover problems with specific engines, they shouldn't be very long videos, because engines should not have that many problems. So it's nice to see that Ford took a lot of the lessons from the 6 liter and the 6.4 and fixed all of them. So the 6.7 is a lot better. And you could even make an argument that it's the best Powerstroke engine ever. Yes, the 7.3 is arguably more reliable, but part of that is because it's a massive engine that barely makes any power and it has no emission systems. So when you look at it that way, the 6.7 is smaller, it's more efficient, it's cleaner, and it makes more power. You could honestly make an argument that the 6.7 is better than the 7.3 and deserves the crown of the best Powerstroke engine ever. I'm not going to leave my opinion on that because you guys will go absolutely crazy, so I'll let you guys debate that down in the comments below. But I also think it's worth mentioning that most of these issues that we've talked about were on the Gen 1 trucks. So you saw a lot of the issues were on the early model trucks like 2011, 2012, 2013. Most of those issues were solved by the time the Gen 2 trucks came around. So 2015 and later trucks are much more reliable with the 6.7 Powerstroke. And by the time the Gen 3 rolled around, pretty much all the issues are gone. The Gen 3 is incredibly reliable and has almost no major issues whatsoever. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the thumbs up button. It really helps me out, helps the channel grow. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what videos you want to see in the future. While you're down there, get subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. We've covered a bunch of different engines, engine tech, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one.